Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte is on the Armed Services and Homeland Security Committee. She joins us. Good evening, Senator.
Good evening, Greta.
Senator, your thoughts on this op-ed by President Putin in the New York Times, speaking directly to the American people around the President of the United States?
Well, I have to say, I think it's the height of hypocrisy for Putin at this point to lecture the United States of America. What he says in the op-ed, Greta, is that we have to go to the United Nations to seek basically a resolution to do anything in Syria. And let's keep in mind who has blocked us every time we have sought a resolution in the United Nations. It's been the Russians and the Chinese. So I think it's very hypocritical of him to say that. He also says in this op-ed that it's not so much the Syrian government who has used the chemical weapons, but again, he makes the claim that the opposition forces use the chemical weapons. And that just does not stand up to the evidence here, Greta. I think, again, this really makes for him to speak directly to the American people like this in such a hypocritical way. Bear in mind, today the French, the UK, and our country went to the United Nations with a resolution. And Putin said, no, I'm not going to accept a resolution there. I don't want to go through the United Nations Security Council with regard to securing the chemical weapons in Syria. So again, at this point, I'm obviously incredibly skeptical with regard to Putin as well as Assad. I hope for the administration's sake that they are able to get the Assad regime to give up its chemical weapons in some verifiable way. But as you identified, I don't know how we verify that they've done so.
All right. And the paragraph that what you're referring to in the op-ed about the poison gas is what President Putin says. No one doubts that poison gas was used in Syria, but there is every reason to believe it was used not by the Syrian army, but by the opposition forces to provoke intervention by their powerful foreign patrons, that would be us, who would be siding with the fundamentalists. Reports that militants are preparing another attack, this time against Israel, cannot be ignored. So this, I mean, he has certainly stated his position, which side he's on this, rather than sort of in the middle trying to resolve this and try to put the lid on it.
Well, that's right. And, you know, obviously, I've been in classified briefings. I've seen the evidence. I'm convinced that the Assad regime did use the chemical weapons. And I just saw a report as I was coming over here that the United Nations report that's going to be coming forward is going to confirm that. So again, for the Russians to say that somehow the Assad regime didn't use the chemical weapons, that just doesn't fly in the face of the evidence. And that really troubles me in terms of our ability to broker an agreement with them. Again, I hope the administration is successful, but I'm very skeptical of the Russians at this point.
All right, so assume we don't broker agreement, assuming the fact that we're not satisfied that they really are going to surrender their chemical stockpiles and that we're going to destroy them, and that so now we're back to where we were. What is going to be your vote? What is your recommendation to the president?
Well, I came out today after hearing the president's speech last night. Here's been my problem from the beginning. I believe we do have interests, obviously, in Syria with regard to the involvement of Iran. And so that's why I also find it hypocritical when the Russians talk about foreign patrons. They have been giving arms to the Assad regime, as have the Iranians. So we do have interests at stake in Syria. But I've just been concerned about the fact that it's been an inconsistent and incoherent strategy by this administration, and for us to authorize military force at this time when we've seen so many inconsistencies, including the one that Pat Buchanan just mentioned. You know, it's going to be unbelievably small at one point. It's going to obviously not, as the president said last night, that we don't do pinpricks. I need a strong plan. It has to be part of a cohesive strategy before we use military force in Syria.
All right, today's September 11th, very dark day in our history, both 12 years ago, but also just a year ago. And you've written two letters with your colleague in the Senate, one to the FBI director and one to the president of the National Congress of Libya about Benghazi. What did you write and why?
Well, obviously, this is the one-year anniversary of September 11th last year, Benghazi, the attack on our consulate when we lost those 4 brave Americans. And at this point, I'm just troubled that we've not brought anyone to justice. And a recent New York Times report basically said that those that have been indicted for these crimes, including Ahmed Khattala, that we're not pushing, our government has not been pushing the Libyan authorities in the way that we could to bring them to justice, and that the Libyan authorities have not been cooperating in the way that they should, particularly what we did for that country. So today I wrote a letter with Senator Graham to the Libyan president saying, please cooperate. We expect you to cooperate. We demand for the relationship between our two countries for you to cooperate with American authorities. And we also wrote the director of FBI to say, how come you're not pushing the Libyan authorities to bring those terrorists to justice, because the victims deserve that.
And if they don't cooperate, Libya, having written this letter and they just sort of they ignore it, what are you going to do then?
Well, I can tell you that we're going to continue absolutely pushing this, because this is a matter of bringing really the president following through on what he said of bringing these terrorists to justice. And we have an ability, I think, to put pressure on the Libyan government. We've been assisting them, obviously, throughout this with aid, and we can hold up their aid if they're not going to cooperate with us. So I think that's important, because we should bring them to justice.
Senator, thank you very much.
Thanks, Greta.